Oh, hi. Welcome back to the continuing lecture in business math. And today's topic is uh, the overhead and markup. So this lecture is a continuation from our previous session where we discussed why um, inventory estimation is needed and why inventory estimation is based on cost ratio, or markup rate based on cost, or markup rate based on selling price. So let's take a look at this example. So this example is slightly different because what you see here is not the markup rate based on cost. This is gross profit method. And you remember there are two methods in inventory estimation. One is gross profit method, and the other one is retail method, right? In gross profit method, all the inventory is expressed in cost, right? And in retail method, the inventory can be expressed in price. But so usually in both retail method or gross profit method, the markup rate can be based on cost or selling price. It can be either one can be used in either method. But here, the example you see here is actually the complementary side of the markup rate based on cost. Why? What does it say here? It says markup here, right? But actually, that means markup rate. But if this is markup rate based on cost, right? Then but this is not. Why? There's another label. I mean, I left this label because this model was based on the previous example, which uses markup rate based on cost. But this example has a cost ratio. What does cost ratio mean? Now think about it. If the cost ratio is 60%, what does that mean? If the price of a computer, I mean, let's say you're buying a computer, and the Dell computer, we've been using that example. The price is $500. And then if the cost ratio is 60%, what does that mean? The 60% of the price is the cost, right? It makes sense. 60% of the price is the cost. So that's what cost ratio means. But then think about it. What does that mean? The other 40% is the markup, right? But then 40% is actually 40% of what? Price, right? So in that case, that 40% is the markup rate based on price. But if you want to express it as markup rate based on cost, right? That's 40 over 60, right? 2/3, right? 2/3 would be what? Like 67% would be 2/3, right? think about it. If six out of if out of the price, right, of um, uh, a product, price of a merchandise, 60% is the cost, the markup is 40%, and 40% is exactly 4/6, two-thirds of the cost, right? So if the markup rate is based on cost, that would be expressed as 66.67%, right? Which is two-thirds of uh, cost, right? If the market rate is based on cost. If the market rate is based on selling price, then it would be 40%, right? But here we are using cost ratio, right? Cost ratio is simply it's not the markup rate, the other side of the markup rate, right? The other side of the markup rate. So if 60% is the cost ratio, then that means exactly cost is 60% of the price, right? So we're going to come back to this example as it is shown in the PowerPoint slide, but let's do it the way it is now, because this is how the textbook, the examples and problems in the textbook is showing, right? So, okay, 60%, which is given, right? That's the cost ratio. And we have beginning inventory, net purchase. Of course, I just put purchase there because, putting net purchase would make it, if I put net purchase, that would be too, okay, let me see, because of this, right? I don't like, as I told you, when you do the homework, I don't like this. I've been telling you, I don't want to see a dead space like this. This is called dead space, right? And why did the dead space, why does it happen here? It's because this garbage is taking too much space. But for these cells, these are totally useless space, just taking up space, right? And that's very wasteful, right? And there will be a penalty if you waste space, right? So what do you do then? What you can do is, so let's say it was like this, and then what you can do is you can highlight these three cells, right? All together, highlight those three cells and go to Home and go to Merge and Center, right? Merge. So you click on that. Okay, it doesn't have to be centered, but now three cells are merged, so it's not going to affect, and also gross profit method. Okay, here, let me do this. You can use merge, right? But it doesn't have to be centered. I will merge first, but instead of centering, I'll just left align everything. Left align, right? Okay. Now, then these two, right? It's because of those things. Just left align. Left align. Just the down here now. Okay. Then when you adjust the column width, it will be just aligned to the width of this cell, right? Which is the longest cell. So You understand, the sum of these two line items are called GAS, goods available for sale, right? And then you must subtract CGS from these sum of these two to arrive at ending inventory, but we don't know what it is, right? But then there's a reason why this is CGS slash sale, because um, this column is the column of cost, right? Everything is expressed in cost, right? But this column is the column of price, right? So $50,000 is what? That's the sales revenue, right? Right? Makes sense. And it's very important that you can distinguish between, um, something expressed in selling price and something expressed in inventory expressed in selling price and inventory expressed in uh, cost. Uh, because if you look at the book, and I've been telling you, the book is flawed, and book is, in other words, book is they what the book is showing you. The example that they show there is uh, very. I mean, it's not wrong, but there's nothing systematic or methodical there. They're just, it's just a hodgepodge of, random uh, method, right? Random. You're doing it. You And what the book is showing you is if you do it with, a pencil and paper, you can do it like that. But then that is very stupid if you're doing it like that. In this day and age, when we are using Excel to uh, solve problems by building, uh, mathematical model for that, solving problems. If you still rely on paper and pencil, to do it in a unorganized way, um, that's then it's totally defeating the purpose of doing this class, right? Now, again, so the book doesn't make any distinction. The example in the book doesn't make any distinction between the cost, items expressed in cost, and items expressed in price. And then if you do it that way, uh, that will get penalized. You understand? Um, it's not the answer. It's the process that matters, right? So, um, and besides this video can be, you can review the video over and over within 48 hours, right? And if you don't do that, I mean, if you don't do your diligence uh, to do that until you can sink it in yourself, then it's your fault, right? The blame, you have to take the blame for your, lack of, due diligence. Okay? I mean, you're responsible for your own result. Okay? You're responsible for any result owing to your own lack of due diligence. And that's fair and square. Isn't that right? So anyway, the point is, we don't know what CGS is, but we know the revenue, sales revenue. And then what does this mean? Cost ratio is 60%. What does that mean? 60% of this revenue is the cost, and which is not, then, anybody can do that. It's not difficult to figure out what is the CGS. You simply, multiply that by this. And that's the CGS, right? And I've been telling you over and over from the our third topic, financial statements. As we went over the income statement, I told you, revenue and CGS are two sides of the same coin, right? CGS is simply the cost side of the revenue. Revenue is the price side of the CGS, right? And also, I've been telling you, um, uh, price is a revenue for a single unit. Isn't it right? Price is the revenue for a single unit sold. So um, production cost per unit is the CGS for a single unit, right? And that's the whole idea, we discussed in the that in the model of overhead and markup, right? So now then, ending inventory it's obvious. All you need to do is you must subtract this from the sum of these two, right? Sum of these items, some of these line items are called GAS. GAS minus CGS is ending inventory, goes without, right? So so basically sum. Okay, and then you might think, oh, okay, then minus this. Okay, yeah, you can do it that way, but also you can do it this way as well. B7 column B8 is your, basically B7 through B8. I mean, if you're adding up all of them, B7 through B9, so that's, you're summing everything from B7 through B9. But in this case, B9 is negative, right? Because you'll have to subtract it. So you can also put everything in the sum command, but the only thing that is in a contiguous range is they are all in a contiguous range, but these two are to be summed. But this one needs to be subtracted. But then B9, if you just put a negative sign, then it's going to be summing up everything. But when a negative number is summed, it gets automatically subtracted. So you can do it this way as well. Okay. So you hit enter. Of course, then you got that will be your ending inventory. Okay. Now, and in retail method, right? This is why. How do I know it's retail method? Your inventory is expressed in retail, right? Now, for example, I don't need these numbers, but I can still, once this is given, I can still, from the cost ratio, I can, solve it backwards, right, to find the inventory cost, inventory in cost, right? But then here, why do I still have two columns? I mean, if it is a method, can it not be expressed only in price? Yes, it can be expressed only in price, but there's a reason why these cost, the value in cost is also given. Why? Because this cost ratio was not given. It was actually solved for. An interesting thing. Oh, what is that? Well, literally, well, let me explain this. So originally this wasn't given, right? But then how do you find your cost ratio? Look, you can divide this by this, then you'll find the cost ratio. I mean, this much out of this is the cost, right? You can divide this by this, but then think about it. This is only one row. It's only the beginning inventory, right? And whatever you get here, try this. If you divide this by this, is that exactly? No, it's only 31%, right? What about this? If you do the same thing, it's 58%, right? Yeah, cost ratio can be different, depending on the time when the purchase was made. For example, if you are a retailer buying, the products from a supplier, right? Depending on when you bought it, I mean, the prices change over time. The price isn't a fixed thing. It changes, with the market situation, it changes with the supply and demand situation in the market, right? So, for example, if the cost ratio, um, uh, think about this. Beginning inventory is what? Beginning inventory is the actually the ending inventory from the previous operating period, isn't it right? Month or quarter, right? Let's say previous quarter. And so if that is the ending inventory from the previous quarter, right? Then when it was purchased, that was during the previous quarter or at the beginning of the previous quarter, right? And when that was purchased, then the price could have been different. In other words, the supplier's price could have been different, right? And then uh, this net purchase was made. This net purchase was made this quarter, right? During this quarter, right? This net purchase was made during this quarter. And then think about it. The price may have moved, right? So that's why the cost, the supplier's cost, right? Although the supplier's price have changed, but the retail price may not change as much because if the retail market is very, very competitive, then unless your competitors are all raising price, reflecting the supplier's price, then you cannot just raise the price yourself, right? Because then you lose your business to because this is a very if the market is very competitive, right? Um, if you if you're the only one raising price, then you will lose all your business to your competitors, right? So what do you need to do? Well, um, uh, you cannot simply uh, use this one as the cost ratio, or use this one as the cost ratio. So what do you need to do? You'll have to use the weighted average cost ratio, weighted average. In other words, that's what I did here. What does that mean? You are summing up, right? Some of these, right? Over some of these. And then that's what? That will be the average, right? Makes sense? So that's what I did. Um, so I got the cost ratio there. Then I can backtrack the CGS from the sales revenue, which is simply what? This times this, right? We got that. And then what about the ending inventory? Of course, It's the same thing, so I will simply paste it there. Okay. Also, I can drag it to the right, and then I can find the ending inventory in the in price, right? Um, so wherever there is, yellow highlight, that means that's the solution cell, right? So you have to give, solution to the yellow highlight. So here, this example is, clearly telling you that here's one thing, and I also mentioned this before. Now, if you follow this the way it is, ordered, right? It is in chronological order, right? Because first of all, there must be beginning inventory, and there should after that there is net purchase, right? And then that's GAS, and you have GAS for that quarter, right? Goods available for sale for that quarter. And then next, what happens is the sale. Sales happens, right? But the cost side of the sale, or cost of the revenue, is CGS, cost of the revenue, right? So after it happens and at the end of the quarter, then you get the ending inventory. So it follows the timeline. But once again, uh, this is not exactly in this order in the income statement, right? You remember that? Because in the income statement, and I also mentioned this when we did income statement, CGS and ending inventory, their orders are switched, right? Do you remember that? So in other words, ending inventory comes here, right? And the CGS comes in the last. And I explained to you at the time why. I told you at the time, I made it very clear, and I asked if anybody notices something weird, and nobody noticed. Why? It's lack of critical thinking, right? Nobody ever noticed. If you have critical thinking mind, right? If you have a critical thinking, you can tell that's kind of, that's kind of weird. Why? I mean, after you have the merchandise, GAS for that, to sell, right, for that quarter, then what should happen next? What should happen next? Must be the sale, right? And then it should be, and after sale, then you will have ending inventory. But how come there's ending inventory before CGS? I mean, it doesn't follow chronological order, right? At least, whether it is right or wrong. I mean, you should have questioned, if you have a critical thinking, you should have questioned why that order is flipped, right? Of course, you wouldn't, even think that far, right? You couldn't even think that far. You just, you were just overwhelmed. You were just simply overwhelmed with whatever you see right in front of your eyes, and just it's like trying to you're paddling, in a random manner, just desperately just to stay afloat in the water, not to drown. Um, Maybe expecting you to swim gracefully is just it's just a stretch. It's a long stretch. But once when I asked that question to you, then at least somebody could have, if you could do some level of critical thinking, right? Somebody could have, hitched on that idea. But now I'm telling you anyway, this is not the order in the income statement, because in the order, in the income statement, CGS has to be at the bottom. Why? Because the CGS is the conclusion of this section. CGS is the conclusion. So it doesn't follow the chronological order. Okay. But now we're looking at only the inventory, right? We're trying to estimate the inventory. So we don't have to follow the income statement order. We're following the chronological order. Okay. But if you put it into the income statement, then it would have to be back to income statement order. So anyway, that's how you use the cost ratio, right? Now, finally, let's go to this one. This is retail method, right? And then everything is in, all the inventory is expressed in price, right? Let's then, think about, let's figure out what they are in cost. And then here, this markup rate is not, this markup rate is markup rate based on cost, right? It's not cost ratio, but markup rate based on cost. That means markup is 40% of markup is 40% of cost, right? And this is also distinction. And if you're a systematic thinker or methodical thinker, there's a reason why this number is, this ratio is in this rate is in this column, cost column. It's not in price column. It's in cost column. That means, it's because it's the markup rate based on cost. If it was the markup rate based on selling price, it would be placed in this cell, not here, right? So even without this verbiage, you should know if it is placed here, then it's the markup rate based on cost. And if it is placed here, what is it? What's the clue? What is it insinuating? It's implying that if that rate is in this column, in the cell, that's the markup rate based on selling price. Okay, so now then think about it. If the markup price is given, right, and the markup rate is based on cost, right, what do you let me do this. Let me insert because where is equation? Okay, equation, right? So remember, price is what? C times 1 plus markup rate based on cost, right? That's what price is, right? If cost is, if cost is $300 and markup rate based on cost is like 60%, right? Or 67%, right? What does that mean? 2/3 of the cost is the markup, right? So then 1.67, if 300 times 1.67, that would come to $500, right? Now, if that is the case, so we all know, right? So that's why we've been doing this cost. Oops, why is it not suddenly not the same? cost is font doesn't matter. That's why we've been doing I thought I could use, okay, let me again, symbol equation. So we've been doing C, that's why we have been doing C. You know what I'm trying to, yeah. P over, right? And plus marker rate based on the cost, right? But now, and think about it. Since price is given, right? Markup rate based on cost is given. So what do? You will simply need to do, right? P over 1 plus markup rate based on the cost. And then, say we got that. And then the rest of it is, simple, right? Just you drag it down, right? And I also already, right? So this way, you might wonder, if you are a retail business and if you use, retail method, right? So everything is expressed in selling price. Why do you need to express it in, again, in cost? I mean, is it double the work? Yes, it's double the work, but it is necessary that you also, I've been telling you, even if you're a retail business, I mean, you can use this, but this is an alternative. I mean, in other words, this is not the primary method. The primary method is always, even for retail business, the primary method is expressing inventory in cost. And also for tax, I've been telling you, for tax reporting purpose, right, all the inventory must be expressed in cost. Okay, so that is, why it is the primary method and it's preferred method, actually. Now, so let's go back to, I mean, let me change the example a little. I don't know if we need to do the example in the slide, but let's try that. I mean, it's simply a matter of In the slide, this was 20%, right? And then I'll just do 1 as in the slide. This is 40K. That's this was 40K, and this was 95,000, 95K. And this was, 15,000, right? I mean, if you actually did what was on the slide, then it would be like this. But again, this seems this is unlikely because this is not a cost ratio. In this case, this is forget what's in the slide is the markup rate based on cost. So it's not cost ratio. Then what do? If this is the markup rate based on cost, you will do exactly, in other words, 20% is the markup. That means cost ratio is actually 80%, right? Then what do you need to do? You will need to use this formula, right? So you'll do, P over plus, if that was the case, that was the markup rate based on cost, 1 plus this. And this would be the CGS, right? Okay, now, so that brings us to, let me switch to, the point again. All right. So now that's basically basically how you do the inventory. Now let's think about the break-even. I think we did break-even analysis when we did the financial statements. But then again, are we talking about the break-even analysis at this point? Because we're break-even analysis is basically based on the income statement, if you think about it, isn't it right? I'm not going to go over break-even analysis, the math behind it again. Of course, I will have to quickly go over it, but I will focus on how to do it in Excel. First of all, you understand the concept, total revenue. You see, our total revenue can be expressed as a straight line, but actually, I told you, eventually the total revenue will be a curve, right? It will be a curve, not. It's not going to be a straight line for through and through. But early on, it will look pretty much like it can be approximated as a straight line. It's not really a straight line, but it can be approximated. Why? Because revenue is what? Price times quantity sold, right? Price times quantity. So it's basically a straight line. I told you also total cost can be approximated as a straight line too, but it's not a straight line in reality, right? Now, and also total cost doesn't from zero, right? Revenue starts from zero because when you sell 0 unit, the revenue is 0. But cost doesn't start from 0. Even if you produce 0 unit, you're still your cost is not 0 because you're already stuck with the total fixed cost, right? Remember that I told I told you that total fixed cost is also called sunk cost because initial investment is already sunk into this business, right? Think about it. If you're a manufacturer like Dell, you have plant and equipment. You already invested in plant and equipment, and the plant and equipment is not um, a couple of dollars. It would be like, tens of millions of hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So even before you start producing any unit, you're already stuck with uh, the initial investment, right? That's total fixed cost. So even at zero quantity zero here, right? Your total cost is not zero. It is it starts from the this level, which is no total fixed cost. And then since your revenue is increasing for every unit, you're selling it for $500 for um, the increase, the marginal increase in the revenue is $500, right? For each unit. In other words, your total revenue increases by $500 each. But uh, total variable cost, your total cost increases by average variable cost. In other words, per unit production cost, which is $300. So of course, their slopes are different. Of course, total revenue curve has a steeper slope because the revenue increases by 500, whereas cost increases by 300. They have different slopes, and when you have different slopes, then they will intersect at some point, right? They will have to intersect at some point. So, when they intersect, that means this is the point where total revenue is the same thing, equal, right, to total cost. That's, this level of uh, uh, it's same here, right? In other words, in dollars, this is the point, right? That's break-even point. So I'm not gonna, once again, we already talked about this, um, so I'm not gonna go further about that. Now, the break-even point can be also graphically. You can point to this. I don't know if you can see. Um, Let me see if I don't know if you can you see this arrow, right? I don't know on this slide, right? If this arrow is visible, but they point to this. They are, usually indicating this point, and they call it break-even point. No, I mean that's not incorrect. That's right. This is the break-even. That's the point of intersection between total revenue and total cost. And the only way you can identify, I mean, how would you identify, verbally the break-even point? Huh? Graphically, you can point at this point graphically, but if you are explaining it verbally, there's no way you can verbally point at this. And explaining it verbally, you will have to refer to the quantity where it breaks even, right? At 50 million units, then the company breaks even, right? I mean, or at like $50 million, the company breaks even. You have to express it either by quantity or by dollar amount. Make sense? So, but everything else is quite obvious, right? Until you reach this point, your revenue is always less than the cost, so the profit is negative. And past this point, revenue is always greater than the total cost, so the profit is positive. But at this point, your revenue is equal to total revenue is equal to total cost, so the profit is zero. That's what it means. Break even, profit is zero. And then, so we write it this way, and we can rearrange and solve it for quantity. If you solve it for quantity, that's right. That's how you find a break-even. So we're gonna actually, you see, this is what I've been telling you. Actually, the revenue is eventually a curve. Cost is also eventually a curve. We are just simply approximating it as a straight line, as straight lines, right? So how do we find the break-even point using Excel? We're going to do that using Excel, right? So go back and application, sure, application. Okay, there you go. So here, let's go to break-even analysis, right? Okay. So let me get rid of, all of these. And so this is this box is the box of given data or parameters, for example, price, and this is the total fixed cost, and this is average variable cost, meaning that this is the per unit product cost. So, and we're gonna, this is basically given, right? So price, yeah, let me switch this around because, oops. Let me put it here, bring it there, bring it here. This looks better because, price and average variable cost are right now next to each other. I'll do the same here. I'll just put a thick bottom border there, thick bottom. Okay. So let's do let's do our example. Our example was like Dell computer, right? The price is $500, but let's make it more realistic. The price is uh, 479. Okay. There's no need for and production cost per unit. Let's make it like two. 289. Okay. And total fixed cost. Total fixed cost is what? That initial investment, right? Of course, initial investment is once again, the sunk cost. And think about it. What would be the initial investment for, computer manufacturing? It would be like, now the plant, you have to build the plant, you have to put the production equipment there. It would be, huge amount. Let's assume it's something like, 490 $492 million, 92, 50. That's like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. 492 million, right? 750,000, right? So this is our unknown, isn't it right? In other words, Q is quantity is the variable, right? because quantity changes, quantity varies, and depending on what the quantity is, right? Um, you can break even or not, or you can even go beyond break even and make profit, right? If the quantity is too before break even point, then you always get you always have loss, right? Okay, this one I will also switch that around because this I'm gonna copy. Okay, all these things must be changed as well. And the things are already filled in there, but it is wrong. And it's a different, I mean, it's a different problem. It's a target profit problem, although target profit problem is not. All righty, so then let's define what total revenue is. Total revenue is P times Q, isn't that right? In other words, P times Q. Nothing there, so you will see nothing. TVC, total variable cost, is AVC times Q, right? Okay. Total fixed cost is simply given, right? Total cost is basically, sum of these two, right? Right? Profit is what? Profit is the difference between total revenue and cost, right? Currently, it is negative because we have no revenue, but we want, if we are breaking even, this would be zero, isn't that right? So here we are gonna find, break-even quantity, right? So this is, break-even output level. And what is the formula? The formula is TFC over P minus EVC, right? And then if you do that, we achieved it, right? Profit is zero, so we found the break-even point. But here, once again, this is very important. Can we say break-even point is like this? Can we say that it is, 0.25? No, we can't. Why? Because we are dealing with computers. We're talking about the computers. I mean, if it is a computer, can you produce, 0.25 unit, and say, oh, we broke even? No, you cannot produce a partial product, right? You have to make a complete product, right? So actually the break-even point should be in a whole number, an integer, right? So you should say the break-even point is 2,587,240, the 294th unit, right? That's where it breaks even. Of course, break even is not, once again, it's just a reference point. No business wants to just break even, but at least it gives us the like the threshold to make profit. You must produce and sell more than 250, 587,000 and 294 units, and above that uh, uh, output level, then you will make profit. Okay. Now everything is not correct here. That's why it is, showing the right thing here. But here, we will have to do the same. In other words, price times quantity. ABC times quantity. And okay, that's you can copy also because it's just the same definition here. Okay. Now you might wonder, why do I have the same example? Why do I have a duplicate? It's a duplicate, but I'm gonna use I'm gonna use not the formula, but I'm gonna show you something called goal seek, right? Which is if you click on the data, right, and then there is something called what if analysis. If you click on what if analysis, you will see goal seek. Okay, then what does that do? Well, it's basically telling you what you want to do. You want to set this cell, right, to the value of 0. Isn't that what break-even means? Isn't that what break-even point is about? You want to set this profit to 0, right? By changing what? Changing means that's whatever changes is the variable, right? By changing this cell, that means this cell is the variable. Then what is and hit OK, and what is going to do is what number here will satisfy this, right? What value here will satisfy this condition? Okay. Of course, it will to make this 0. It will the computer will find what this should be. You hit OK, and then what did you say? You saw the number flickered many times, right? The number flickered there, but you probably saw that it started from 1, right? And what did it do? The computer plugged in every possible number starting from 1, right? It started 1, 2, 3, and it did all 2 million, right? 587, and then 293, and so it plugged in all the numbers, and 293 it didn't satisfy the condition. It tried probably 294, it overshot, so then it computer figured out it's somewhere between 293 and 294. It tried every number in between until it found this that satisfied this. So what is this? It's trial and error. The computer did trial and error, right? Reiterative process. Now again, what the computer did was a very stupid thing. Isn't that right? A smart person wouldn't do it that way. And for a human being to plug in like 2,587,293, and a lot of numbers in between 293 and 294. For a human being to do that, it will take a lot of time. But that's what the computer is made for. It can plug in, it can do experiment, right? But in a split second. In other words, within almost a split second, right? It flickered, the number flickered like millions of times, right? Number flickered, 2 million, but that's what the computer is, good for, right? The computer can, but we don't do it that way because that is very for a human being. That's so wasteful, and it's just simply stupid, right? To do it that way. Human brain can do it this way, right? So that's one way you can do it, but you should do it this way. Okay. All right. This is the This is the overhead and markup. I mean, we didn't, yeah, overhead and markup. Uh, so that's it for today. Time is up. So I will see you in the next lecture. Okay. Stop recording.